So you've given us a really expanded and broad definition of sexuality that is not just behavior, but it includes so many other dimensions. So how does that actually relate to a theology of joy or just our understandings of joy?
Yeah, so if we think about sexuality, including our understandings and experiences of sensuality, of intimacy, of how our bodies change and develop over time, how we understand our own orientation or identity, that really actually is very similar to how we understand an idea of joy, both scripturally but also theologically. Right? If we think about joy as emotional attunement, as looking for the good that God calls us to, that we have to see that good, but we also have to be able to emotionally respond to it. A sexuality that really embraces developmental understanding and learning about sensuality and intimacy is deeply connected to how we experience joy. There's also a sense of theologies of joy that think about this good that we are attracted to, right? And if that good is something we are moving toward, we want it to continue. So sometimes when we think about sexuality, we think about it as desiring something or consuming some object, right? But when we think about it in the context of a theology of joy, we actually love something so that it will continue, right? We desire something so that it will continue. We want those emotional feelings of desire, of love, of butterflies in our stomach to continue, not to be squashed out. So when we think about joy and sexuality, it calls us to relationships. And many folks writing on a theology of joy suggest that joy is communal. And we might say to ourselves, how does that fit with sexuality, right? We don't want to say everyone should be involved in this experience of sexuality or joy. But in fact, we do. People who have life-giving and loving relationships, we know when we experience those relationships that they're fruitful, that they bring joy to other people. They're not just contained for those two people. But people's experience of one another bears fruit and is generative for the people around them. And a theology of joy calls us to live in sexual relationships that actually invest in the world around us, that actually bring greater joy to the people around us rather than less.
So one thing I just would like to add is as we understand this kind of theological perspective of joy, it really does fit with the developmental, adolescent developmental perspective as well. In order to be able to do that, we really need each of our young people to know themselves and know how they are in relationship, more broadly than just romantic relationships or sexual relationships. And that's part of what's happening during adolescence, that those developmental stages are occurring, that social developmental domain that young people are going through is where they're learning how to do that. And so I think part of when we think about why we want young people to wait to initiate sexual behavior, it is so that they do know themselves and know what is important to them and what they value. And so if we can connect those messages around, we're not just saying wait until you're older, but we're saying wait until you know yourself, and here's how we can help you know yourself. And once you know yourself, you're in a better position to bring joy to the people that you are in relationship with.
And yourself.
Right, right.